Why I'm making this video. I'm doing it for two reasons. The first one is to show the loopholes in the administration of the Queensland Speeding Fine Administration. The second one is to make an actually online inquiry. So the people from the Queensland Revenue Office that should be watching this, you'll have to get to the point where I'm actually making the inquiry. Bit of a background information. I got my first speeding camera fine over 35 years ago. I thought it was unfair because I was under the impression that you're innocent until proven guilty. So when I got that fine years ago, I actually went and asked some legal people who said something to the effect that sometimes laws are reversed. So the innocent until proven guilty is reversed around the other way. And that's actually what happens with speeding fines and also other types of fines now. So I wanted to take the matter a little bit further. So I looked up the law in the state of Victoria at the state Victorian State Library, because at the time there was no internet, and I had to find the legislation. I discovered there was provision in the legislation for a person to say that they do not know who the driver was, but the notice that I had received made no mention of that. So I decided to take the matter to court to see if I could prove that because the document made no mention of that, therefore the fine wasn't valid. So I went to court, my day in court, and I explained to the judge, magistrate, whoever it was, that there was a lack of what was in the law in relation to the notice. In other words, the law said you could say there was nobody, you didn't know who was in charge of the vehicle, but the notice said nothing about that. Actual fact, the judge agreed with me. Said, yes, Mr. Gregg, you're right. It doesn't say anything about that. But then he went on to say, rather than saying, oh, the whole thing's not valid anymore, he went on to say that he'll give me extra time to pay. He obviously did not want me to let others let me off because it would be set some sort of a precedent. Now, after that, I thought that everybody that should take the matter to court, and it would be overwhelm the court system, considering the number of people that get such fines. Obviously, that never happened. Or perhaps it did start to happen, but what happened is the legal people or the government didn't particularly like that, and so what's the consequence? They made it difficult for people to take the matter to court, including the fact that you have to pay extra money to take it to court, as what happens now. Fast forward to the current situation in recent times. I got an infringement notice. The notice wording on it said something to the effect that if you take the matter to court, it's going to cost you extra, as I mentioned before. So this is what it shows on the notice. I carefully read it all and its reference to legislation. It was very confusing. Basically, you're only given three options: pay the fine, nominate someone else, or have the matter heard in court. In the section re-nominating someone else, there was also wording about saying something that you do if you do not know who was driving the vehicle. Okay, so I'll show the notice here and read out the wording. To make things even more confusing, included with the infringement notice was this statutory blank or partly filled in statutory declaration form. Nowhere on that form has a provision for nominating or saying that you were not the driver and you do not know who the driver was. Now there's also something about making an inquiry. I made an inquiry. It was multiple pages, so I had to put it on my website. I'll show you now how I made the inquiry. This is how to make an inquiry in relation to a speeding fine or online inquiry. You actually go to this website, the Queensland Government website, in relation to transferring a fine. To find out how to get to that, it should tell you on the infringement notice. If it isn't, I'll put it in the comments, not the comments, in the information about this on the YouTube page. You'll notice it just says transfer a fine. It doesn't say anything at all about nominating, about putting in an inquiry. So it tells you all about that information, etc., etc., but it doesn't tell you anything about submitting an inquiry until you get down to here. It says, if you do not know who the person was driving the car at the time, please submit an inquiry. Okay, so I'll click on that. It goes to this page, submitting an infringement inquiry about this service. You can only submit an inquiry for a camera detected device. All right. You can submit an inquiry for the following type of infringements, or you can do other ones. You can only submit an inquiry for a camera detected offences. Eligible infringements. I guess they're all camera ones. All right. So asks a whole lot of questions and that, and says, do you want to continue? So you press continue. Okay. Various steps. Accept the usage. You got to accept the usage. So I press accept if it comes along. Step 2, verify the customer details. You got to put in your Queensland driver's license number. All right, put that in. Put in your first name. Okay, put that in. Okay, last name. Okay, date of birth. I'll blur those out, hopefully. All right, and then I continue. So the next thing, it says log in, enter details. Online access code. You need to have an online access code or answer questions. Better off choosing what online access code. You need a code, new code each time you log in. How do I get a code? So email an online access code. So I shall do that. Right. And then it'll ask you to enter the 6-digit code. So I'll have to go to my email, copy that, go back to where I was. Put in the online access code. Okay. All right, get out of that. Continue. All right. Okay. The next thing is to find the infringement. All right, you've got to actually go through and find your infringement. We've got multiple infringements, so there's infringement. All right. Don't know if that was the one. Continue on that one, or it was that one. Continue on that one. All right. Okay. I think it's only that one. So you can go and infringe the notice or do it and you can continue. All right. Okay. All right. Then it says view the notice. View. Now you can enter the details. This is where you start typing. So you start typing away there what your details are. So you can make an inquiry. The inquiry can be anything you like. All right. So you should put something simple and then you submit it. I'm not going to submit it. You can attach your supporting documents, attach PDFs, etc. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, that's how you do it. That's how you submit an online inquiry, right? Once you do that, all right, I'm going to come out of that. I'll cancel that and finish. So that's how you submit an online inquiry. It's reasonably simple. You've got to go through a few hoops and loops, but once you've submitted that online inquiry, then you can, they will send you an immediate response, right? And then the matter is put on hold until they respond. And when they respond, you send another on-site inquiry. And then they respond again, you send another on-site inquiry, and so forth and so on. If everybody does that, they're going to overload the system and have to do something about it. Who knows what they'll do. Anyway, any inquiries, give me or email me or put comments in the comment section. After sending an inquiry, this is the reply I got back via email. The heading, your infringement inquiry has been received. Your infringement inquiry has been received and will be reviewed. Please find attached a copy of the inquiry details submitted in a PDF. Don't pay the fine, etc. What happens next? While your inquiry is being reviewed, the infringement will be put on hold. I'll repeat that. The infringement will be put on hold. Once the review is complete, you'll receive a written response to your inquiry. We will use the correspondence method you chose via my post. A few weeks later, I got an email saying they did not have permission to read my website. I responded saying I gave them the permission to read my website. Now, multiple emails about not accepting the inquiry on a web page went back and forth. It was not resolved, so I made another information request on their website. This is what the first administrative loophole is all about. It took a couple of weeks for them to get back to me about the second inquiry I made. And when I did, they then removed the original infringement notice and replaced it with an equivalent infringement notice, giving me another X number of days to respond to it. So that's the first part of the administrative loophole. The fact that all you have to do is keep on making inquiries, and then they respond, and then you make another inquiry. They respond, you make another inquiry, so forth and so on. In the long term, I guess you would eventually have to get to somewhere where you do decide to do something. But at this stage, because of their administrative system of not allowing, of automatically responding to your inquiries saying that the matter's been put on hold, they have to respond to you. I don't know how many times they'll do it, but that's the administrative glitch. That's just the first one. There's another one coming up. But before we move on to the other administrative loopholes, just one about this one, a bit more about this one. I said before that if everybody actually took the item to court, it would clog up the court system. And they've obviously forcing people not to do that by making it more expensive, making expensive to go to court with the possibility of not getting a positive result. However, this administrative matter that I've just described of just putting in an inquiry doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to do anything. You just put in an inquiry. You don't have to particularly say anything great in the inquiry. You could just use my wording, use this web page, say, please refer to this web page, or please not my web page, my YouTube video, this YouTube video, or my web page. You could say, refer to that. All they're going to do is keep on writing back to you. So it just keeps on going round and round in a loop. So this is a bit of a way of getting beyond having to pay fines and getting back at the government that seems to just be interested in getting revenue from speeding fines. This is a way back at it, and all you've got to do is learn how to do an inquiry. I'll repeat at the end here how you make an inquiry. Revenue person watching this is my inquiry. The first set of questions I asked in my initial inquiry was mainly to do with how I go about saying I do not know who was the driver of the car. Part of the response that I got from your organisation was this. This is what you wrote. Please note, you cannot use the online declaration system for the purpose of submitting an unknown user declaration. You must submit a statutory declaration. That's what you wrote. My response to that is, based on my viewing of the online web page, which is, I'll put a link to it here, I agree that I cannot use the online declaration system for an unknown user declaration because it has no provision for doing so. However, I disagree that because of that I must submit a statutory declaration. The definition of an unknown user device on the State Penalties Enforcement Act 1999, Schedule 2 dictionary states, and I quote, "Unknown user declaration for an offence involving a vehicle means a statutory declaration or an online declaration under the Transport Operations Road Use Management Act 1995, and then goes on to say more. Note the words or an online declaration. In addition to that, the Transport Operations Road Use Management Act 1995, Section 114 in Part 4 states, a defence under subsection 3 or 3A is available only if the person notifies the Commissioner, the Chief Executive of the SPEA Administration Authority about the matter in subsections 3 and 6 or subsection 3A within the required time, A, in a statutory declaration, or B, in an online declaration." Note again the words "or in an online declaration." That is, two pieces of legislation that state that an online declaration can be made. It would appear that the online declaration does not allow for the legislation what the legislation allows. I wish to make an online declaration for an unknown user unknown user declaration. Please tell me how. The email that answers some of my questions appears to be providing information that is in contravention to the quoted legislation. In particular, that I cannot do an online declaration. I've already covered that. That same email also provides a list of items stating that they must be included for a declaration to be considered. However, the legislation does not mention some of those items, they being that I have reviewed the offence images, and who has access to the keys of the vehicle at the time of the alleged offences, and where was the vehicle parked prior to the alleged offences. I believe that Section 1146A and B of the Transport Operations Road Use Management Act 1995 covers what must be considered, and it makes no mention of those items. Therefore, my inquiry is the instructions in the email I received wrong? Previous inquiry questions unanswered. These are the questions I asked in the previous inquiry that were unanswered. 1. The notice leaves out important information and appears to use words or phrases that contradict the Act. Does that make the notice invalid? 2. I did not know if I had to make a declaration. On reading the legislation, I am of the opinion I do not. Please confirm that. 3. The statutory declaration form that accompanied the notice has no provision for stating that you do not know who the person in charge was. I suggest that this could be to deliberately confuse the receiver or of the notice. Is this so? 4. Read the website qld.gov.au, nominate a camera fine. If you don't know who the person in charge was at the time of the offence, please submit an inquiry. Actually, I did not want to submit an inquiry, rather wanted to report that I did not know who was driving the vehicle, but I cannot find anywhere else online where I can do that. Is there anywhere else online where I can do that? Point 5. If not, why not? 6. Considering the text at the top of the web page, about this page, is this a deliberate tactic so as to not allow such reporting? 7. If so, why? 8. I said I wish to know how to report that I do not know who was driving the car. As it appears that there is no other way of doing so, I will report it here. Is that acceptable? 9. What accuracy is used in respect to time the offence happened? Minutes, seconds, or fractions of a second? 10. Is my previous writing notification to the Commissioner of the Chief Executive of the SPEA Administrative Authority? 11. If not, what is required to do so? 12. Is what I previously wrote an online declaration? 13. If not how do I make an online declaration. 14. If the website I am reporting this information on is not the place to report it, then that fact could be stopping someone from making such a declaration. Is that a fair assessment? And 15, is what I have written regarding an online declaration. Please answer all these questions. Third, administrative loophole. This one is partly administrative and partly legal. A defence to a camera speeding fine is that you do not know who was driving the car at the time of the alleged offence. To do so, you have to have in place some way of knowing who is driving the car. To do that, you could have a logbook or a box where whoever drives the car records that they do so. However, as an owner of a car, although you have such a system in place, there is no legal way you can enforce such a system. Therefore, if you know you were not driving the vehicle at the time of the offence, and the records you ask others to complete show that no one else was driving the car at the time, you have met your legal obligations. An interesting little sideline is that the definition of an unknown user declaration in the definition are the words, a corporation, the vehicle was not being used for the corporation at the relevant time, and B, the person making the declaration has not been able to find who was in charge of the vehicle at the relevant time. The consequence of reversing innocent until proven guilty. Because the standard law of innocent until proven guilty is reversed with camera speeding fines, a person who owns a car can pay a fine knowing they were not driving the car at the time and are not contravening any laws. They may do so to save someone else from losing their license because that person has too many demerit points. Yet a person that makes a false declaration about who is driving the car is committing perjury. That is illogical and a distortion of the legal system. Camera speeding fines are not saving lives. A search on Google on camera speeding fines are not saving lives brings up this, with a link to this. The basic conclusion. Queensland rising road toll, despite aggressive speed camera enforcement and high fines, highlights the limitations of relying solely on automated enforcement. As road deaths continue to rise, calls are growing for governments to take a broader, data-driven approach to road safety that includes infrastructure investment, driver education, and a more visible presence. If you want to not pay a speeding fine in Queensland, and you want to delay paying a speeding fine in Queensland, you can do so by making an online inquiry. By the way, you can't not pay the fine, or you can do suspend the fine for I don't know how many times. I discovered this by default when I was trying to make some inquiries about speeding fines. And I found that if you make an online inquiry, as soon as you make the inquiry, automatically it sends you a thing back to say that you have the item has been suspended until they reply to your inquiry. I don't know how many times you can do that. But anyway, this is how you go about it. So either on the infringement notice or on the infringement notice, you'll find a place where you can nominate another driver. You won't find any place on that where it says what you can do to make an inquiry. All right. However, if you go into Google and say how to nominate someone else as a driver of a camera speeding offence, it will give you this information. All right. and it says nothing about making an inquiry. However, if I look at show more, how to transfer a fine, transfer motoring in Queensland, it shows you here how to transfer a fine. Okay, righto. You can submitting an online transfer of fine service. All right. Okay, here it is. So you've got to be at this particular page, right? And if you read this page, it says about this service, this online service allows you to request a fine to be transferred to another person or organisation. Okay. What you need to do is make an inquiry. It doesn't say anything about making an inquiry there, but it does say further down here, all right, if you do not know who the person was in charge of the vehicle at the time of offence, please submit an inquiry. Okay, so that's what you need to do, submit an inquiry. So you go to that. It comes up, submit an infringement inquiry about this service. It tells you a few things about the service and tells you the inquiries you're eligible for, anything to do with a camera. Okay, who can use the service, okay, etc. Right, who handles the inquiry, don't worry about that. Let's go to continue. Step 1 to 4, terms of use. You have to accept the terms of use. Okay, so we'll accept that. Okay, you need then to log in. To log in, you need a Queensland driver's licence. Okay, so I will paste in my Queensland driver's licence. You need to put in your first name. I'm going to put that in. You've got to enter it exactly as it's on your licence. All right, otherwise it rejects it. And your name. Okay, whoops, did that wrong. Okay, all right, wants to know your date of birth. Okay. Okay, put all that in and continue. Righto, still says to log in. Okay, to be able to log in, you need either answers and questions if you've previously set this up or get an online access code. So to get an online access code via email, you need an online access code. Right, email an online access code, which I'm going to do. Get it to do that to me. All right, it says it's emailed me an online access code. Okay, so your email address registered with us. Okay, all right, it's come through. I know that, so I'll copy that. All right, and then I jump back to where I'm putting the. Whoops, jump back to where I'm putting that information in. Okay, and I'll put in the online access code. Paste it into there. Okay, then we say to continue. Okay. All right. Next thing it says is select an infringement. If you've got more than one infringement, it'll appear there. So what you've got to do somewhere along here is select the infringement. All right. So you can do that by clicking on there and opening up the infringement, or you can go, I'll go back to this one here and open up that infringement. Okay. So you need to select the infringement. Okay. Continue, assuming I've selected the infringement. Submitting the inquiry, all right? Okay. Now you can provide the details of the inquiry. You can type up to 3,000 characters. So you can type whatever you like there, all right? The inquiry could be, what can I do to not pay the fine? And they'll give you some sort of an answer, all right? Okay. I'm not going to do that, all right, because I don't want to complete this one. So you can also attach something if you want a PDF. I'm not going to attach anything. I'm not going to continue. I'm just going to cancel that. Okay. So that's how you make the online inquiry. After you've made that inquiry, they will send back almost immediately, because it's an automated system, a email indicating the inquiry that you've made and that that the item has been suspended until they reply to you. All right. Okay, they will then reply to you. After they reply to you, you can make another online inquiry. And so it goes on and on and on. Now, I don't know how many online inquiries you can do. I did a Google search on it, and the Google says it doesn't know how many online inquiries you can do. Obviously, they're going to get sick of you at the end, all right? However, my whole purpose of doing this is to overload the online inquiry system. I overload the automatic system that automatically takes your photos, sends you an offence, and gets you to pay for it. If everybody or lots of people make online inquiries, it's going to overload the system. Obviously, you can't overload the system by taking it to court. You don't have to take this to court. This is not going to court. This is just making an online inquiry. So any questions, put it comment in the comments area or email me. Other than that, goodbye. Disclaimer. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or official government advice. Watchers are advised to consult official Queensland Government sources for the most accurate and up-to-date information regarding road rules, penalties and enforcement policies.